At 3:12 a.m., my phone glowed with two notifications that should never exist in the same breath: an email from North Star Title confirming a DocuSign packet signed by me for a condo earnest money addendum, and a U.S. bank alert about a cashier's check $9,850 debited from our joint account at a branch on University Avenue 30 minutes earlier. I stared at the stylized copy of my own signature, neat and rounded the way mine has never been. While I blinked, ParkMobile pushed a live session starting on 2nd Street, near Stone Arch Lofts, the exact block where my husband had once joked people pretended to live above bakeries as a personality. I lay there in the blue light and listened to our ADT panel announce barrage entry, even though my 2015 Outback set nose out under the ash tree and my husband, supposedly mid-shift at the city's 911 center, had no reason to be anywhere near our house. We live in Longfellow, a South Minneapolis neighborhood where kind older men shovel their neighbors' sidewalks and the corner bodegas have bulletin boards that read like tiny newspapers. Our bungalow is 1,000 square feet of philosophy, original wood trim, a kitchen that refuses to admit it's small, and a basement forever a degree or two damp. The sunroom faces 34th Avenue and gathers Legos like a magnet. My workbench sits on sawhorses, the laundry sanded drawer fronts leaning against a furnace that clunks when it decides to remember its job. I run an online shop for reclaimed wood shelves and minimal hardware, and when orders come to a drizzle I install closet systems for people who own too many sweaters. My husband, Evan, works nights at MECC, the Minneapolis Emergency Communications Center. Dispatch schedules bend time. Days bleed. He packs a thermos and a moral purpose, and he comes home humming calls we're not allowed to repeat. We have a daughter in 2nd grade who loves the Lake Nakamis Community Center and believes the otters at Como Park Zoo are her private friends. We are the kind of family that eats chili 3 nights in a row and calls it tradition to dodge the word budget. We pay off a Fargo urgent care bill in careful installments because our kid wheezes in cold air. We owe on a line of credit I used when a client's check took the scenic route. We put our tax refund into a furnace that sighed like an old dog before finally catching. The warning signs before that 3:12 a.m. never took center stage. They were stagey hands knocking scenery into place. Evan started wearing a woodsoak cologne that never touched our dresser. He kept the charger curled on his side of the bed for a phone from a carrier we don't use, with a case that looked borrowed from a teenager. The passenger seat in the Outback sat farther back than his legs warrant. He said his hips hurt. A rubberized key appeared on our hook. He said it fit a storage closet at MECC because supervisors had begun locking supply carts after an audit. $40 ATM withdrawals multiplied in tense weeks like rabbits do in stories, and a new visa we never applied for last for $8,327 began paying small subscriptions with names that sound like transit cards, River Pass, Lift Lane, City Desk. I told myself we were both exhausted. Doubt, I reminded myself, is the glue under suspicion, sticky and messy, nothing you frame. Dispatchers cover for one another. I have heard him say that a dozen times. He looked thinner in a way our stress explains. Every marriage grows a few locked cabinets. You don't break into your own house. Except that morning I got up, pulled on a sweatshirt, and checked the out-of-date MyQ app for our overhead door. At 3:07 a.m., the sensor reported ajar for 2 minutes and closed by keypad. Our Ring Doorbell Pro 2, which I forget even exists until trick or treating, had recorded motion, but no person, just a slice of a sleeve, dark blue fabric with a reflective fleck that matched the strip on Evan's winter jacket. Informed Delivery had emailed a 3 a.m. digest showing us change of address confirmation in both our names, forwarding from our house to a P.O. box on Lake Street I did not know we rented. At 8:10 a.m., after finding my own signature yanked into a condo doc I never read, I made coffee and a list on a yellow legal pad because a pen comes me when a person won't. I wrote North Star title, DocuSign session ID, and the case number the U.S. bank rep gave me $114,920 after I called bleary-eyed and asked whether my checkbook had eloped. I wrote ParkMobile 2nd Street, ISC session start, and my own plate number because it seemed right to write it down even if the app had misrecognized. I wrote a DT panel log garage. Then I drove to Stone Arch Bridge because pretending I wouldn't was worse. People walked dogs with glittering breath. My breath fogged in front of me like a thought I couldn't catch. I did not go inside the lofts. I'm not a detective. I sell shelf brackets. But a half block away, the North Star title office sits behind glass with plants that look like they are paid to perform wellness. I stood across the street and watched a woman arrange folders into neat rows. I took a photo of their hours and the way the name looks in Chrome because evidence keeps my hands from shaking. By noon I was sitting in the Outback outside the UPS store on Lake and Minnehaha watching my husband's old Corolla slide into an angled spot like a shy animal. He went and hunched against the wind and came out with a small white key hung on a key tag that said 42B. He didn't see me, or he decided not to. He drove past my bumper without the little courtesy wave he gives everyone in church parking lots. I followed 3 blocks childish, I know, and then peeled off because I don't want to be the person who narrates a chase when she could take action with dignity. Action. I opened a separate checking account at Affinity Plus on Hiawatha, a credit union that still calls you by name with sincerity. I rerouted my Etsy payouts and my Closet Craft invoices to land there. The rep printed a paper with my new account number, and we wrote in pencil a budget that included shoes for a child who grows on principle. She sat with me a full minute longer than required when I said my husband may have started a new household without me, and then she circled a fraud hotline number the way teachers circle verbs. I filed fraud alerts with Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. I froze our existing HELOC because I wanted one thing to feel immovable. That evening, I printed every notification. The ParkMobile session ended at 3:48 a.m., a duration that could be a nap or a handover. The North Star DocuSign audit trail showed an IP address and a timestamp to 5:53 a.m. originating from the free Wi-Fi at a coffee shop on University that we sometimes use with our daughter for hot chocolate after we take her to watch trains. The U.S. bank cashier's check processed at the branch inside a grocery store with a Western Union counter. The change of address form listed a box number that matched Evan's key tag. I lined everything on the dining table and wrote 1, 2, 3, 4 on Post-its. The wood grain looked calm under all that complication. I held my reveal for a place with witnesses I could pretend had nothing to do with us. The Nakamismites hockey parents meeting always smells like wet wool and coffee that gave up. I brought my blue expanding file, a poor man's trial bag, and waited until half the room had finished asking about fundraisers and ice time. Between a dad in a puffered jacket discussing practice cones and a mom-labeled team manager by her own lanyard, I quietly asked for 3 minutes because I had to correct a family contact list before a child left the rink with the wrong adult. I held up the daycare update form and pointed to the emergency pickup named Aaron M., with the relationship field crammed with the word aunt and a phone number I didn't recognize. I said this person was not allowed to pick up my child. The team manager scrolled the team app and, bless her tidy soul, asked if I meant the Erin M., who had carpooled her kid last week while the roads were slick. A coach murmured about knowing Erin from the Lofts, a neighbor. He said, My chest went glassy. I set the rest of the evidence on the table of the cashier's check, the DocuSign printout, the ParkMobile screenshot because embarrassment is a solvent and truth needs help dissolving the sticky parts. The coach with the lofts nodded slowly, the way men do when they realize the story they laughed at on Tuesday night includes someone at the next folding chair. Evan didn't deny in that room. He said we should talk later, after the kids skated, after people stopped watching us with the faces of people trying to decide whether to mind their own business or be good neighbors. He suggested identity theft. He reminded me of the outage the 911 center had experienced with their time clocks. He said he had loaned his card to a coworker. No, he didn't say that part out loud, but his eyes flickered to the floor in the exact rhythm of a half-truth landing hard. I didn't escalate. I named the fact about the school pickup authorization and asked the team manager to email every parent the new list with my restrictions. She did, while the kids scraped figure eights into the etched ice. The next morning I called the UPS store and asked, in a voice I reserve for insurance representatives and clerks handy with policy, whether Box 42B in my name existed. The clerk, trained to keep their eyes clean, said the box could not be discussed with someone who wasn't the lessee. Then she paused and suggested checking our apartment lease for forwarding instructions. We don't have an apartment lease. The pause meant something people like me never get but sometimes earn, a hint you can use. I drove to the Minnehaha Avenue Public Storage because a scrap of me suspected we owned a room full of explanations. The manager couldn't reveal a unit. That's illegal and frankly wrong. But she could answer yes when I asked if unit phone 115 was paid up on a credit card ending 8,327. She could mention that gate access lobs looked like a high school math assignment to 18,33347 every Tuesday and Friday. She could say, in a tone that didn't carry a shred of malice, that people store strollers in cribs there sometimes, and when they do, they put blankets over them like they are embarrassed the world knows they are happy. She slid me a pamphlet about lock drilling when keys are lost and told me to have a great day. I thanked her because manners keep me from turning into someone I don't want to meet. The twist that knocked me into a new register came from our pediatrician's portal. A message landed in the general inbox thanking parents for updating our emergency information and noting that Evan's cell had been replaced by a number with a Wisconsin area code for the secondary parent. The note asked whether prenatal vitamins for Aaron M. should be billed under our plan as the system auto-populated from the family's current insurance. I reread the sentence like it was a poem I mistrusted. Prenatal. The auto-population implied either a clerk had wrong-clicked or someone had done something in a computer that tugged our names into a brand new category without telling me. Would you insist on a chain of custody paternity test the instant your eyes exit a sentence like that, becoming the person your child will later tell their therapist sounds like an unstitched seam? Would you wait in the vain hope that the truth will volunteer for the spotlight if you keep the stage well lit? I asked Evan by email because paper is a fence to meet at Midtown Global Market, a place where no one yells and there's always someone eating something louder than your miseries. I proposed a date and a Labomed talks in St. Paul, case number MTX-89072 reserved under our names for a legal test just in case biology had opinions about the future we couldn't afford to make fuzzy. I wrote that I wasn't declaring anything, just installing a guardrail. I wrote that more than anything I wanted not to talk about adult choices in front of our girl. I CC'd myself and uploaded the PDF to a folder labeled Letters to Future Sanity. I stopped the cashier's check timeline by appealing my own bank statement. U.S. Banks, Fraud Desk, added a second case number UB-114939 981 and called the branch manager while I sat under a portrait of a river I could not identify. The manager faxed me the check image Evans' handwriting in the memo line, the box address as our return address. North Star Title's receptionist confirmed that without both buyers present, the DocuSign package would be held. I called North Star's lawyer and left a 50-word voicemail because brevity sounds like control, and asked for a letter acknowledging the forged signature with my full name spelled correctly. It arrived that afternoon. Neat letterhead, our case tagged NST-1093. A neighbor who teaches physics at Roosevelt High and jobs toward the river at ungodly hours knocked at dinner time with a face that asked forgiveness before it handed me anything. He said he had noticed Evan coming and going between midnight and 4 twice a week, same nights my ring had flagged our garage, and he had assumed a rotating schedule made nonsense of our movements. He said last Tuesday the Corolla idled while a lift dropped off a woman he didn't recognize, and then he had watched the two carry a boxed stroller out of our garage and into the Corolla, one at a time, careful and quiet. He said he debated whether to be the person who told a woman something she already knows. He said his conscience wouldn't let him go inside without saying it. He left quickly because heroes act fast in discomfort. My stomach spent the next 12 hours practicing knots. I wrote the date and the words boxed stroller in my blue file, then added a copy of our ADT log from that night for good measure. I texted the school to move R&M to do not release. The secretary replied with a thumbs up and a line I cherish without irony: documentation is love. I wrote the 911 Center's HR general email asking for a meeting under the guise of updating a spouse's contact with questions about shift logs because irregular badge times can cause headaches with taxes. A person named Renaud wrote back with the tone of a person who has learned to be careful. They scheduled us for a joint meeting with a union rep present because no one loves precision more than municipal HR. The meeting, held in a windowless room at the MECC campus off 31st Street, proved how facts hate open spaces. HR rolled their cursor across the screen like a tractor smoothing a field. They showed entrances and exits both by badge and by door alarm. Evans' badge had opened the Bay 3 door at 2:56 and again at 3:43 on a night he said he ate in the break room. The union rep emphasized the policy around leaving property during meal breaks and the way discipline works. She talked about progressive consequences and preserving wellness. Renee said a time clock audit Q-7842 had triggered on 3 names. Evan's name overlapped with another, and auditors would look. I kept my hands folded like someone in a painting about resignation, and when they offered me silence, slid across the table the ParkMobile printout, the cashier's check image, the DocuSign letter the schools do not release, and a photo of the UPS keypad I had watched dangle from Evan's hand. I did not ask HR to solve my marriage. They are not that kind of office. The next twist arrived in a way that felt designed to insult my posture. A FedEx envelope waited on our stoop, addressed to me with the North Star title letterhead and a packet inside, a quitclaim deed transferring my half of our house to facilitate a smooth transaction attached to a notarization from a bank branch I have never entered. The signature block contained my name with letters looped in ways that made me feel a little nauseated, my name trained to behave for someone else's pen. I sent the entire packet to my lawyer, who filed a fraudulent conveyance alert with Hennepin County and pinned the number to my anxiety. He N-556,102. She told me to call the police non-emergency and attach that to a report because ink turns into evidence when a server prints it. I aided MPD assigned a case, MP-77,433. The officer at the desk said notarization fraud joins a parade of similar cousins the minute people discover DocuSign and anxiety in the same month. He said use certified mail for anything now. He told me to sleep if I could. I laughed because I had forgotten that verb. 2 nights later, the Ring doorbell caught what I refused to call a dream. At 3:09 a.m., someone pressed a key into our deadbolt and then withdrew it, the movement of a person rehearsing. The door remained locked. The feed caught a sliver of a belly under a winter coat, a pale wrist flashing a bracelet I recognized from a photo my daughter had pointed out on a school hallway board, the bracelet her art teacher wears, strings and charms braided into something kids think is magic. The person's hair auburn caught the porch light a split second, then vanished. The recording saved to my phone. I forwarded it to my lawyer, who wrote back the next morning with a single sentence that felt like receiving a bar of iron. Save this. Do not talk about it in front of your child. I requested from MECC a reschedule with a second date because Evan emailed to say he could not make the first due to a mandatory overtime assignment. MECC added a second slot, provided a chain of custody ID, and wrote in caps, "Both parties must present ID." I printed 2 copies and put one on the refrigerator because I wanted the house to help. He did not come to the first appointment. He wrote 3 paragraphs that said I was making a child into math. He used the word exhausted twice. He blamed a broken time clock for a ParkMobile session a mile away from his building. I asked once simply if he wanted to appear for the second slot. He didn't answer. Silence is a form of punctuation. The condo board at Stone Arch, in response to the email I sent under my most reasonable tone, wrote to say short-term rentals had grown teeth. They appreciated community-minded heads up. They said if Unit 312 had been hosting, they'd address it. They wrote thank you at the end. The P.O. box on Lake stayed rented. The ADT announced a garage entry and a garage closet 2 nights in a row while my daughter slept in the next room, and the dog raised his head and then decided no one would die tonight, not if he could help it. The day I stopped being a person who reacts and started being a person who dictates small corners of her life arrived without fanfare. I took my daughter to Minnehaha Falls to watch the ice start to build its winter shell, and I told myself, out loud but too soft for anyone else, that nothing clears like a January sky and that my life did not need to be anything but uncrowded. I drove to the school and delivered a formal letter naming pickup rights and including our lawyer's card. I set up a calendar we both could see and logged every minute of parenting because judges like timestamps more than feelings. I froze Evan's access to the Outback through the My app and messaged him the alternate car seat and swap times with no apologies attached. Would you press the case that gets a man disciplined at the job that gives your child's health insurance, knowing he will tell himself you picked a spreadsheet over solidarity? Would you make a concession because if the job goes, a cascade begins, Cobra, premium math, late notices, and your kitchen cannot hold another stack of envelopes? Evan remains suspended with pay under audit HR-7842 because the city and union dance in careful shoes. He moved into a 1-bedroom above a pizza by the slice on East Hennepin that throws a perfect triangle of light onto the sidewalk at midnight. He returns our daughter on time and brings her library books back early. He answers my emails in a tone that sounds like both apology and accusation. He took the storage unit off auto pay on the 8,327 card after I sent a screenshot to HR, and he asked public storage for a change of lock. My neighbor texted me a photo of the notice flapping on the door like a surrender flag. The other sheaf, that's what I'm supposed to call her, teaches an art elective at my daughter's school 2 days a week and lives a block west of Stone Arch Lofts. Her bracelet jangles in the hallway the same way in daylight it did in my ring clip at night. My daughter says she brings charcoal sticks in a little tin and lets the kids draw with the sides because line art is just one of many ways to tell the truth. Some afternoons I watch my child's hands smudge, and my throat tries to remember whether the world is kind. The art teacher and I do not speak. She smiles with a mouth that looks like it understands mornings. I nod because I want my daughter's world unfractured where it can be. The prenatal note turned into a bill and then a zero when I appealed that someone else's bracelet should not ride our insurance. A different portal note, weeks later, mentioned a benign cyst and a patient anxiety. I made myself not be cruel and wrote nothing back. I told my lawyer to remove the lab order if we reached a new arrangement that made biology less terrible to ask for in a building with fluorescent lights. She said I could, and then with a kindness I hadn't expected, added that many people learn to hold two truths. The person who betrayed you is also the person who knows how your kid likes their sandwiches cut. Now the aftermath feels like Minneapolis in late February, hard, bright, and less forgiving than the postcards promised. I sand drawer fronts until my hands buzz, ship shelves to people who think order equals peace, and write numbers in a ledger with more affection than I have for most nouns. Our daughter sleeps in a bed I built her with a hidden cubby, and we keep notes in there for each other under the heading good things, like perfect sledding, snow, and cocoa that doesn't burn your tongue, and the dog's weird dreams. Evan and I exchange calendars and receipts and words that are square and unadorned. He attends counseling through the city's EAP and sends me a screenshot of attendance with the header line still visible because paper makes decent fences. I move money on Fridays and claim the left side of the garage as a jurisdiction. Sometimes I drive across the stone arch bridge at night with the windows cracked, and the water sounds ambitious, and the city does its own inventory with lights. I see the chrome letters of North Star title and imagine rows of folders deciding who lives where. I pass the UPS store and picture key TAT 42B hanging in a pocket it never belonged in. I go home and put our daughter to bed and sit in the sunroom under the plant lamp pretending it's a sunrise, and I scroll through my own evidence like a stranger. The DocuSign signature sits there, a neat looped lie that looks like me only to someone who never watched me sign a field trip slip at the counter with a pen I found in the junk drawer. The ParkMobile receipt still reads 2nd Street, SC, like the city put a sign there just to test me. The ADT log lists barrage entry next to 3:07 a.m., and the house hums as if the fact has become part of its structure. The final image that keeps circling me comes in quiet stretches at 3:12 a.m., when the heater clicks and the ring's little halo watches and the cold outside makes itself visible. I picture my signature floating above a condo addendum like a ghost that doesn't know it's not welcome, my plate number caught by a camera, our garage lit like a stage for a scene I didn't agree to. I picture the stone arch bridge from below, the way the arches hold the river like a secret, and the far bank with its neat windows pretending they never see anyone leave. I imagine the blue cursor of the DocuSign waiting over the line that wasn't mine, blinking like a dare. In that half-dark I ask myself whether mercy looks like tearing out a page or writing on the back until there's no paper left to lie on. Then the house settles, the ADT panel counts the minutes it owes me, and I pull a blanket to my chin and decide one more night to stay on my side of the bed I still own.